or a solution, a problem and a solution. First of all, the problem. I would argue that this problem is just this whole neoliberal idea that corporations should rule the world, that government of, by, and for we the people should not be of, by, and for we the people, to paraphrase Abraham Lincoln, that instead it should be of, by, and for the oligarchs, for the very wealthy. And the very wealthy then, basically own and control the media and make sure, or at least their piece of the media, the Fox News, all the right-wing hate radio stations, they are very specifically, very intentionally programming a perspective, a point of view. And the whole goal of this is to get average working people to vote the interests of the billionaire class rather than the interests of the working class. Real simple, right? Cut taxes, for example, as I pointed out, an hour and a half ago. If you cut taxes on working class people, you actually, over time, will cut their wages. It's just, this is how the world works. So, but if you go back to 2005, Mike Pence put together an email that he sent to Representative Paul Teller on September 13th, 2005. This is right after Hurricane Katrina. And he said, basically, it's titled Pro-Free Market Ideas for Responding to Hurricane Katrina and High Gas. And he says, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to automatically suspend Bacon-Davis prevailing wage laws. In other words, in a disaster area, do away with the requirement that government money is spent at the prevailing wage. In other words, allow people, allow governments, for that matter, to hire people at minimum wage. Allow them to pay crap wages. Paul Ryan's added to the list. He said, make the entire area flat tax-free enterprise zone. Waive all regulations. Make it a so-called economic competitiveness zone. 2005 and 2006 capital gains and dividends should be zero, because all those poor people in New Orleans lost their homes, and they're having to live off the dividends from their massive stock investments, and so they shouldn't have to pay taxes on that, right? Mike Pence also said individuals in the affected area should have Section 911, the overseas earned income exclusion, uncapped. In other words, you can earn an infinite amount of money from overseas and not have it taxed. Waive the death tax. In other words, do away with the inheritance tax, because those. It's so bizarre, right? I mean, mostly Hurricane Katrina, the neighborhoods that were most terribly hit were poor and largely black, and so we're going to do away with a tax that's only paid by a few hundred, almost entirely white families every year. Give school choice vouchers for displaced children. Reduce, suspend, or eliminate tariffs on Canadian lumber and Mexican cement. Because, after all, we don't need to buy wood from the United States or cement from the United States. We can streamline the environmental hurdles to building new refineries. Make it easier for small refineries to increase capacity. Allow more offshore drilling. Allow drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Temporarily suspend the gas tax. Permanently reduce the gas tax. Waive or repeal gas formulation requirements under the Clean Air Act. Encourage private market projects to recover usable energy from oil shale. It's called fracking now. This was 2005. I got this, by the way, from Naomi Klein's website, naomiklein.org. And you can find it there, this whole thing on the shock doctrine. So along those lines and what they've been doing, Donald Trump just rolled back rules, basically the fines against nursing homes. If you put grandma in a nursing home and they treat her like crap, you can actually, report the nursing home and they will get hit with a fine if the inspectors determine that, in fact, grandma got beat up or got treated badly. And the money from the nursing home that the nursing home pays in the fine goes into the Medicaid bucket that helps pay for nursing homes. So Trump not only, and by the way, he did this in response to a request from the American Health Care Association, which is the group that represents the companies that own nursing homes. So no more inspections, no more fines, everything's going to be good, we're all happy. This is Trump's Christmas present to America. Here's another one. Trump to slash safety regulations put in place after the nation's worst environmental disaster. This is going to save industry $900 million over a decade. The industry it's going to save specifically, offshore drilling. Because they're just like, you know, so poor and broke and in trouble. The proposed changes would reverse, this from Think Progress, Mark handwriting today. The proposed changes would reverse safety measures that offshore oil and gas companies consider burdensome. He's quoting from the Wall Street Journal. The proposal has not yet been made public, but it's about to. Over the past 11 months, the Trump administration has canceled or delayed more than 1,500 planned what they call regulatory actions. I would call them consumer protections. More than any previous president by far, said Donald Trump on December 14th at the White House. They've relaxed obligations to stream real-time data on off. Here's specifically what they're doing. If you're running an offshore oil rig, you have to stream data from that offshore oil rig back to land in continuous real time. In other words, you got to have like a camera and some sensors that are telling you the state of that oil well at all times. You have to stream that back. And there's a requirement that the people who are inspecting your most critical equipment, like the blowout preventer that failed in the Deepwater Horizon thing, the people who are inspecting that most critical equipment can't just be some guy that ExxonMobil hired last week after he left his job as a Pizza Hut delivery driver. They actually have to be people who have a certification that they actually understand and know how that piece of equipment works. So here, this is from the Think Progress piece. The proposal would relax obligations to stream real-time data on offshore oil production operations to onshore facilities where regulators can review them. The changes would also eliminate a requirement that BSEE must certify third-party inspectors of critical equipment, such as the blowout preventer that failed in the Deepwater Horizon spill. So this is the kind of stuff, you know, that's going on. How do we deal with this? What do we do about this? Oh, and actually, I'll give you the answer to that, by the way, in 6 minutes after the break that's coming up in about a minute and a half here. Noam Chomsky lays out in a new book, it's called Requiem for the American Dream, the 10 Principles of Concentration of Wealth and Power. And basically, it's how the billionaires, the Rupert Murdochs of the world, the Fox Newses of the world, the multimillionaires, the Sean Hannitys and Rush Limbaughs of the world, how they are working to basically destroy the working class of America and promote the interests of the millionaires and billionaires of which they are part. And Chomsky, in his new book, Requiem for the American Dream, says there's 10 things that they're working on doing. Very simple. Each chapter lays out chapter and verse of how they're doing it, who's doing it, how they're doing it. Number one, reduce democracy. Make it harder to vote, make it harder to participate, just reduce democracy. Number two, shape ideology. You do this with think tanks, with selective news stories, things like that. Number three, redesign the economy. Move it so that the economy works for the wealthy rather than the economy works for working people. Working people from 1930 to 1950 had the highest, to 1980, from the 1940s until the 1980s, working people had the highest growth rate. The bottom two quintiles, the bottom 40% of America, saw their wages raise faster than the top three quintiles, than the top 60%. That all flipped upside down under Reagan. Shift the burden onto the poor and middle classes, attack the solidarity of the people, let special interests run the regulators, engineer election results, use fear and the power of the state to keep the rabble in line, manufacture consent, and marginalize the population. It's serious, serious stuff. So what can we do about this? Well, there's actually a really great idea out there. I'll share it with you after.